Purchase some of that, God. How much to purchase some of that hair? Hello, dolphins. How are you, mate? Yeah, it's I've got to say I'm a little bit lucky, mate. I'm a little bit lucky. Let's leave it at that. Plus, I just don't look after it. I think that's the key. Don't look after your hair, and it just continues to grow. Every time you try to look after your hair, it stops growing. Right, we're almost ready to go, folks. Just making sure YouTube's up and running. And then we'll have a look and see if we've got Facebook up and running. Beautiful. Yep, Facebook looks like it's running. G'day, Halen. How are you? Thanks for joining us. We're talking about Tropical Cyclone Mitchell, but we've got a fair bit of action going on through Queensland. I just want to get rid of the Queenslanders. The Queenslanders stick around for a few minutes and then they bugger off, and then we'll get into the real stuff shortly. But we'll kick off shortly. Just waiting for. We usually wait 2 to 3 minutes to get all the notifications out that we're live. I'm hoping that you can hear me. Right. Okay. That one and that one. Beautiful. That's down. Alrighty. All right, we might kick off. I think we've got a few people online now, so that's the notifications must have been sent out, so that's fantastic. G'day, folks. Chris Nitso, Weather IQ. I'm the lead forecaster at Weather IQ, and we've got a fairly significant tropical cyclone impacting the coastline tonight in a fairly populated section of. It's very, very hard to find populated sections of WA's coastline, but this one's managed to find it. It's basically impacting Karratha, or it's starting to impact Karratha over the last hour or two, and that impact will get stronger over the next few hours. That's our main topic of conversation, but before we get there, as I said, there's a little bit of action after old mate over here on the western coast. There's a little bit of action out there in the east that we need to discuss about a weak circulation in the Coral Sea, tracking westwards, stalling, and then it gets messy, and then it gets messy with multiple circulations. So I'll have a quick chat about that. We thank our major sponsors on the top left there, Fair Income Builds Townsville. So if you're in the market for a shed, safe accredited shed, check them out. And our subscription service, weatheriq.com.au/subscribe. It's $32.95 a year. It's not going to break your bank. And everything I'm talking to you about tonight, we've already talked to the subscribers about probably for a number of days now by the time I bring it out to the public. So if you're interested in the nitty-gritty, if you're interested in the technical about the why the rain's happening, how confident we are about stuff, make sure you become a subscriber. If you're not sure if you would like to subscribe to us, just relax, check out some of these updates, and if you start liking them, then perhaps that's your cue to join us. We thank our subscribers for their support. All right, let's get stuck in. All right, Queenslanders, there's a fair bit going on here without much substance, and then we'll get stuck into WA, as I mentioned. All right, so we've got a little low, or a trough, at the moment, located to the west of Vanuatu. That little trophy low is going to move westwards. You can see there's sort of multiple centres. This centre is going to drop down to the south. This centre is going to come west, right? So as we get to around about Willis Island, or just east of Willis Island, what we're going to see here is the system just stall. Now, like we talked about, if the system intensifies dramatically, it'll push out to the southeast. See you later. We won't need to deal with it ever again. If it doesn't intensify, it becomes a nuisance. And we're expecting, as the days go on, we're expecting more and more of this thing to become a nuisance. By nuisance, what are we talking about? Well, it means that it's just going to hang around. It's not going to die, but it's not really going to do anything either. So it's one of those situations where it continuously operates in these waters. Now, ordinarily, that means fine, dry weather for Queensland. But there's a little bit of a spanner in the works coming by way of a trough that comes up the coastline. So as this trough comes up the coastline and this low stuffs around out here off the coastline, what we're going to see is potentially a second circulation forming somewhere around northern inland Queensland. So you can see here that we're starting to develop multiple, in fact 3 circulations. GFSAI tends to get a little bit overboard with the circulations, a bit like its parent model. But overall, you can see that there's multiple circulation centres that develop along a trough line. And even the ECAI is very, very similar on this, all right? So we can see here that multiple circulations that develop. I've gone a little bit too far there. So multiple circulations that develop on the trough line. Obviously, there's one dominant circulation for the next few days out there around Willis. But once this trough from the south comes northwards, you'll see there's our second circulation developing inland of Townsville to Mount Isa. There's our first circulation, the one that we're watching. And so this complex interrelationship between these two systems will occur. We're not sure how that plays out. Obviously, if there's two systems here, they're going to limit each other's potential to some degree, but there could be a hell of a lot of rain here for a large chunk of Queensland. All right, so it's not a situation that we're overly concerned about tropical cyclone development as such, given the fact that, sure, the conditions aren't too bad, environmental conditions aren't too bad, but there is real potential here for dramatically increasing rainfall as we move into next weekend and beyond for Queensland in this setup. And longer term, we may see another Gulf low, northwest Queensland low, and of course, we really don't know what they're going to do until they start doing it. But generally speaking, very, very wet second week of the forecast is on the cards as of now. And then we're probably going to see who's this? Sean, all about Queensland. Are you for real, Sean? Mate, shut up. Sean, if you weren't here at the start, stop talking shit right now. All right? I just explained to you what we're doing. We're going to talk about Queensland for about 5 minutes. Now we're going to talk about it longer because you've just made me blow up. All right? And no, you don't pay for us to chase. That's not what you pay for. You pay for information, Sean. All right? Cut your shit out. Wait your turn. All right. So what's happening here is we've got that low pressure system in the Gulf. All right. Now, we're not too sure what that low is going to do, but we are going to see an increase in rainfall from that system. Okay. And from the trough system moving northwards. So expect to see very significant falls of rain through large chunks of the state in the second week of the forecast. All right. Now, there are some signs that this Gulf low may then move west into the Northern Territory and may become another low or tropical cyclone for WA longer term. All right. So that's what may happen here. All right. I say may because we don't really know how these will operate in that longer term. But what we are seeing is clear evidence that there's increasing rainfall. All right. So increasing rainfall as we go into the second week. All right. Let's get over to WA where the main event is. So for those of you Queenslanders just tuning in for that part, just understand we do have a lot of instability. We do have a lot of rainfall out to sea coming in towards the coast. All right. And then after that, we're not too sure how that plays out from the second week of the forecast. All right. Let's get over to Tropical Cyclone Mitchell and let's have a chat about that. Now, Sean, now we go over to Tropical Cyclone Mitchell, bud. All right. Otherwise, settle down. All right, now, going over to here, what we're going to see firstly is a couple of observations from Lusondre Island. It's a French name. South-southeasterlies, 104 kilometres an hour, gusting to 135. So that's clear evidence that we're looking at a Category 2 tropical cyclone at the moment. That system should pass basically right over the top of the island. So this is an extremely good place for observations, all right? Really good place for observations. We're going to see probably the best of the observations coming through right over this island, which is fantastic. It's very difficult to get a good data set from that. from a cyclone in WA, and this looks like an absolute, assuming, and I hope that everything continues to work, we should see some really good data come out of here. All right. No, there's a no legenda. No, is it? I think it's not. I think it's a weird Frenchy name. The Frenchies. I think the G is a Z. Letsundra. Something like that it is. Because the G is a bit weird in the Frenchies, because it's a French name, it's not an Aussie name, the French named it. All right, so on that island, great set of obs. Karratha, we've got another good set of obs here, but they're going to be just outside the main area. So you can see here, Karratha, 57. They're getting basically Category 1 winds at the moment. In fact, if we take a look at the WA observations, we can see through the last little bit, the island here, 106 gusting to 120. So that's definitely, remember, when we're talking about category winds, we're talking about the sustained wind speeds, all right? So sustained wind speed. So Roebourne is right on the marginal threshold of category 1 winds at 63 kilometres an hour, okay? If we take a look here at the island, we'll call it the island, the French island, 106 Ks is putting it smack bang mid-range Cat 2. All right, so that's where we are at that time. Karratha, at the moment, south-southeasterlies at 63, so right on the edge of Category 1 winds. Because remember, winds are all about the sustained wind speed, not about the gusts. Gusts don't determine the tropical cyclone intensity, sustained wind speeds do. All right, so right now, Karratha's on a marginal Category 1 level. Roebourne's on a marginal Category 1. I've got a feeling that places around Point Sampson will be a little bit windier than that. Right, let's have a look here at where the cyclone is. Right, it's following the forecast track from the Bureau of Meteorology fairly closely. And you can see here that there's Karratha, there's our cyclone. So our cyclone is currently about 110 kilometres to the northeast or north-northeast of Karratha. All right, so the cyclone at the moment you can clearly see on the radar, and I'm just going to get rid of our lightning overlay. So what you can clearly see on the radar is that the western side of the circulation, particularly the northwestern flank, is where a lot of our deepest convection is. All right, so this means that a lot of our heaviest rainfall is not where it should be. It's not where we want it to be. We want it to be over land, but unfortunately, the way the system is structured, a lot of its biggest rainfall while it's pushing through this part of the Pilbara is going to be offshore. That will change tomorrow when it starts to move more southwards, and all of that rain will come onto and to the south of the circulation. So the idea here is that we're just not going to see the level of rainfall that we normally expect from a tropical cyclone, but that won't stop us from seeing very, very significant winds over the next X number of hours. So let's talk about winds now, and let's have a look at the sort of wind speeds we can expect over Karratha over the course of the next few hours. Actually, just before we do that, I'll come back to that. We're definitely going to do that. I just want to have a quick look here at our Google Weather Lab and have a look at where our system goes over this little period of time and where our tightest model members are suggesting this system will go. Now, I want to get rid of some noise here. These charts can get very noisy, and we can see way too many squiggles and Mr. Squiggle lines. So we want to make sure that we're using the models that have got it right in that first 6-hour period. So there's our cyclone where the grey is at 4 p.m. today. So I want to use only the models that have got that close to right. So they're not going to get a spot on, but only the ones close to right. That's these ones here. I don't want to use anything way out there to the west. I don't want to use anything way out there to the east. I want to use the ones that are at least on the right track. And so if we use those models only to look at where the system's going to go from here, we can see not many hit the coastline around Karratha. What we see is the centre of the circulation pass just to the north of that Dampier area and in the archipelago. So once again, that island is going to be key for actual observations. So really good place for observations as we go through. Now, the system is going to move in this direction. So you can see here that as we get to 8 p.m. today, the system should be located almost due north of Karratha. So what are we right now? 6 p.m. about 6 p.m. So in a couple of hours' time, might be just a touch east of directly north of Karratha. So that's where the models have it at 8 p.m. As we get into 2 a.m. in the morning, we see the system moving in a southwesterly direction to the northwest of Karratha at 2 a.m. Now, you'll notice there's a fairly large area of, not disagreement, but a fairly large area of where the system could be at 2 a.m. And I'll talk you through why that is when we have a look at that. When we have a look at the weird structure of the center of the circulation. So what happens here is as the center of circulation starts to encounter the land, it actually distorts the center to some degree. So it instead of being a really tight center, it ends up becoming a bit looser. And what ends up happening then is we expand the wind field. All right? So that's the expectation there as we get to 2 a.m. So as we get to 2 a.m., we're interacting with the land. We're expanding the eye feature a little bit more oval shaped, which then possibly limits further intensification after that point. And then we expand the wind field out. And I'll show you what that looks like in a model shortly so you're not getting too confused. From there, we see the system continue to track southwestwards at... So from there, we see it continue to track southwestwards at 8 a.m. It's going to be around its closest point of approach to Barrow Island at that point. And Barrow Island will be on the western side. What did we say about the western side? Yeah, we said that the western side is the side to be in when it comes to the intensity of convection and intensity of winds. So Barrow is going to find itself on that western side. As we continue pushing through into... let's try that again. That's 2 p.m. there, yep. So 8 a.m., close to Barrow. 2 p.m., have a look at where we are. We're generally speaking getting pretty close to Onslow by that stage. But you can see we have a very wide disagreement about the forward speed of the system at that point, right? So we still have a couple of models lingering around Barrow, and then a couple of models that have already hit Onslow by 2 p.m. So we're starting to lose that consistency in the model guidance at this point due to the forward speed and momentum of the system. And not necessarily the system moving in very many different directions, but just the forward speed of the system is what creates a bit of doubt here. And then as we continue into 8 p.m, we see the system pushing into the bay here, and then as we go into 2 a.m. and 8 a.m. in the morning, the system has hit the coast and is pushing down in and just inland at this stage, is expected just inland of the west coast. And then we see effects as we go into Monday, push south towards Carnarvon, and heck, there might even be some indirect effects around Geraldton as the cyclone pushes southeastward. So they might just see a bit of an increase in shower activity, but nothing too dramatic by the time we get to Gero. All right, so that's where we're anticipating our greatest effects. Dampier, the Point Sampson area, Wickham, Roebourne, and then further west, all through this coastline, out to about Exmouth is where we're anticipating the major threat area. And then obviously if the cyclone tracks southwards, we need to watch this west coast, this Coral Bay area, all the way down to Carnarvon, could see some Category 1 winds. Right, let's get stuck back into Karratha because it's about to get pretty hectic there tonight. All right, so what we're doing here is we're having a look at some wind field modelling, and we're having a look at the internal dynamics of the cyclone. Very important here because the cyclone is going to pass so close to Karratha that we need to look at these internal dynamics to understand the wind field modelling here. All right, so what we can see here, just in the last half hour or so, we've just started to see a bit more of an oval shape. See that oval shape feature there? So I'll just pause. So we'll go back 2 hours. So we had a circle shape there, right? So that's a circle. Now, see how we've developed an oval? Yeah, so this oval becomes important. So what happens here is when we develop an oval shape, what tends to happen is we disperse the winds over a larger area. And that oval shape happens because of the development of friction around the eye. So there's a fair bit of friction around the eye on the south side. So we see the southern side of that eye just expand out a little bit. because of that frictional effect. So what this does is it then expands the wind field out a bit. Okay, so those winds getting to around that category 2 range are expanding outwards from the centre. And if the centre was tight, we could really map that wind field out and we'd see that Karratha was probably just outside of it. But because the centre has now become loose, the idea here is that we're expanding the wind field to some degree. That means, and it's pretty bad news for Karratha, because it means that there's going to be some pretty significant wind there in the next 6 to 12 hours. All right, so let's have a look at what that wind field looks like as the cyclone approaches. So these are in knots. So I'm hoping you can see down here's the scale in knots. So and these are wind gusts in knots. And we're just going to zoom in a little bit so we've got enough to see Point Sampson, Wickham, Roebourne, and Karratha and Dampier in the same map. So see if we can do that at 64, see if we've still got them. Oh, yeah, there we go. We've got them at 64. So as we push into the next few hours, we're going to see things get pretty hectic pretty quick there around Karratha. So as that eye elongates, the wind field expands out. So the cyclone's still to the north of you, but we're starting to see winds getting up to about 60 to 70 knots potentially when the cyclone is just south. Now you can see the expanded eye here. So you can see that the eye extends from out here to out here. And see how the southern part of that eye extends further southeast? That's from the frictional effect of the surface on the actual feature itself. And so what we're seeing there is an expansion of that wind field out. All right, that's an important component of this forecast, because if the eye was tight, this would be much tighter around the eye. Because the eye is loose, it's about 40 kilometres across and about the same from this way, about 35 kilometres this way. It means that we've expanded the winds out probably an extra 20 to 30 Ks. Normal eye is about 20 to 30 Ks wide, all right? So this one's about 40 to 50 Ks wide. So this means we've expanded the wind out an extra 20 Ks from where it would normally be. So this puts Karratha into the destructive wind field of the system. And you can see here that the system, as it pushes this way, impacts Karratha in that and puts Karratha into that destructive wind field. All right, so there's a period there after about 8 p.m. tonight where we see those really strong winds, or between 7 and 8 p.m. tonight, that we start to see those really strong winds over Karratha, and then they will continue as the cyclone passes just to their northwest. Notice, though, that the eye can expand all the way down to the Dampier Peninsula. So notice here how the eye expands southeastwards. All right, from here, we see the system continue to track west-southwest and continue to push out into open waters. From here, we're going to see a northerly flow for Karratha as we get into 2 a.m. And eventually, after about 2 a.m., we're going to start to see the winds drop off significantly. Let me give you an idea of hour by hour what to expect here. So that's an overview. Let's have a look at hour by hour. There ain't nothing good about surprises in a tropical cyclone, folks. I say that to my members all the time. All right, so we got to make sure that we're not surprised by anything. Going to feel pretty hectic tonight because the sun's gone down and shit's about to get pretty hectic out there. So just be aware of what's coming. Right, so let's have a look here at wind gusts. So we're using a slightly different model here, not quite as high resolution, but it gives us a pretty good idea here at what we can expect from a wind perspective. Now, bearing in mind, folks, when I show you this, the times, actually, you can't see the times. Now you can. All right. So bearing in mind when I show you this, that the times here are in Queensland time, because I'm obviously in Queensland. So you'll need to subtract 2 hours from this, okay? So as we continue into 8 p.m, so the Karratha's getting about 40 to 50 knots at 8 p.m. You can see here Point Sampson. So I'm just going to put that over Point Sampson. So we've got a sort of marker there for them. 63 knots. So they're getting stronger winds than Karratha at the time. Moving into 9 p.m, you can see how those winds increase around Karratha, right? So we're getting up to about 50 to 60 knots there. We're getting up to 60 to 70 knots around Wickham and Point Sampson. Notice the difference in the way the winds are operating. For Karratha, the winds are coming over land towards the water. For Point Sampson, they're coming over water towards the land. And that has to do with exactly the position of the cyclone versus those areas. As we continue, we can see 70 knots developing around Point Sampson, 60 to 65 knots around Karratha. Now, just bearing in mind, when we're looking at model numbers, model wind speeds, what we're looking at here are 1 second wind gusts that the model is estimating at 10 metres above sea level. Usually what that equates to is about a 5% difference. So about a 5% decrease compared to what we're seeing on the screen is what we can actually expect. So if it's saying Point Sampson 72 knots, for example, probably something more around the 65 to 70 knot range. All right, so just a little bit lower than what the model's showing us, because the model is designed to show us the 1 second or the instantaneous wind gusts as such. All right, as we continue, we can see here that the strongest winds are now impacting Point Sampson at around about 10 p.m. tonight. Moving beyond this time frame, we can see that the strongest winds for Karratha have started around about at 10, 11 o'clock tonight. And then they will continue through 12, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, even up to about 6 a.m. before we start to see them weakening back to below Category 1 intensity. All right, so that period tonight is going to be quite hairy. The big thing to understand here is going to be the general lack of rainfall, even after, as the cyclone's pushed away, because it's doing a lot of its rain work on the western side. What we're going to see is a general lack of rainfall on the eastern side for the next few hours after it's pushed to the west. And so that's going to feel a bit weird, because the strongest winds are going to be coming onto you, but the heaviest rain is going to be away from you. So it's going to feel a little bit weird, because you'd be expecting the strongest winds and the heaviest rain at the same time, right? That won't necessarily be the case here tonight, overnight tonight into tomorrow morning. Now, the other thing I need to show you here is going to be the rainfall aspect of this. Now, just be aware that our heaviest rainfall for Karratha is probably in the next couple of hours, right? So coinciding with the start of those really big winds, it's probably when we're going to see the heaviest rainfall. Now, as those really big winds continue, the rain actually eases off. So those really big winds continue, but the rain, you can see dropping off, the intensity of rainfall drops off. Now, as we continue into tomorrow morning, as the winds drop off, and here's the key, as the winds drop off, we actually see this little feeder band that comes in on the eastern side of the circulation. Now, what the difficult part of this is going to be is picking out exactly where that feeder band's going to be, right? So some of the models will put that feeder band a little further east, some of them a little further west. You can see at the moment it's sort of smack bang between sort of Karratha and Point Sampson. But as the cyclone moves west, so too does the feeder band. All right, so that's an expectation tomorrow morning. So just as the winds start to ease off, be careful, because this is quite an intense period of weather, as a, sort of like a scorpion tail as such. It's got a bit of a sting in it on the back side of the cyclone. So just after everything's settling down, be careful of the scorpion tail. All right, that system will clear up, or that little tail edge of the system will clear up as we go through to just probably before lunchtime, maybe around lunchtime. Beyond that, we're not seeing any further substantial rainfall, just some isolated showers. Still going to be pretty gusty from the north, those winds, but generally speaking, nothing to worry about there after about lunchtime. So the key timings, so heavy rainfall in the next few hours, strongest winds kicking off about that 9, 10 p.m. time frame, maybe even 8 if the cyclone's really expanded that wind field, but probably 9 or 10. And then continuing that really strong wind till about 3 or 4 in the morning, maybe 5 o'clock in the morning if you're unlucky and the cyclone slows down. All right, that's the expectation for Karratha. Winds maxing. So once again, if we're taking a look at maximum winds, let's do a wind accumulation forecast. So we can see here we're gusting to about 65 knots there for Karratha. So around about 65 knots would be the general maximum, but you know, you've got to allow for a little bit of error here. We can't take these things exactly literally. So what it's saying there is potentially 60 to about 70, 72 knots could be what Karratha ends up seeing maximum winds. Dampier a little bit more than that. So Dampier might be more 65 to 75, 80 knots potentially, right? Point Sampson looking at 70 something knots as their max. So they're potential range of between 65 and 80 knots as well. So they might actually see as stronger winds as Dampier, even though they're never going to get anywhere near as close to Dampier as, anywhere near to the centre of the cyclone as Dampier is. All right, so that's the expectation with regards to our maximum winds. Look, there's going to be some variations of those winds, and you can see here a couple of models going well overboard, but generally speaking, that's what we're anticipating. From a rainfall perspective, this is something I've been telling you about now for a long time. Don't expect a lot of rain out of this. This is not going to be your typical tropical cyclone rain event here, not for this section of coast. It will be later on for areas further west and south, but not for you folks tonight. There will be some rain to start with, but overall, you're going to be pretty disappointed in the rainfall aspect of this, okay? So, yeah, I want to make sure that you're on the same page here when it comes to rainfall. Because the cyclone is producing most of its rainfall on the northwestern side, which is a little bit unusual for a cyclone in the Pilbara, got to admit that, to see it develop and keep all of its rain on the northwestern flank, there is going to be a limited amount of rain that ends up falling on the mainland, all right, in this section of the Pilbara. All right, so that's our overview of what we're expecting for Karratha. Just want to see if there's been an upgrade to the system. So I'll just have a quick look at the cyclone overlay. Should get a new one there. See if there has been. No, still a 2, yeah? Still a 2? Oh, where are we? Where are we at the moment? Dampier again. Yeah, so still a 2, and system tracking pretty close to where the bomb's got it. Once again, be careful though. The expansion of the wind field is the key here in the next hour or two. Sorry, you can't see that. Let's try that again, Nitso. So be careful here. The expansion of the wind field and the development of that elongated eye feature, that's a problem. That's a problem, A, for the cyclone's intensification, but also B, for potential impacts on the coastline, because it does make life a little bit trickier when we're wind field modelling with the expansion of the eye like that, or the elongation of the eye like that and the expansion of the wind field. But quite clearly there, evidence that on the western side of the circulation is where that really heavy rain is, and that's where it'll stay. It's not going to come over the top of Karratha. You're not going to see that extreme rainfall coming into Karratha. That's going to stay out to sea. What Karratha's going to get are these bands of rain and then really strong winds on the backside of the system, and then your best chance of big, really heavy rain is going to be the scorpion tail tomorrow morning. Okay? Alrighty, so that's Karratha in a nutshell. Let's quickly head out to Barrow Island. Do we have Barrow? I don't think we've got Barrow, so we're going to have to use the Karratha overlay for Barrow. Actually, no, we can use Windy's overlays there with Barrow. All right, so for Barrow, not much going on tonight. All right, so for those of you that got friends and family, not much going on this evening. Hang on, this evening, not tonight. Tonight there's a lot going on, but this evening, not much going on. So for Barrow, things get hectic, and we'll use Onslow as well, because Onslow is going to be close to ground zero here. So for Barrow, we can see here that the intensity begins to ramp up. So we're starting to see tropical cyclone strength winds from about 3 or 4 a.m. in the morning. Barrow's going to find itself on the western side. Barrow's going to find itself on the western side of the circulation. All right, so that's the strongest side of the circulation in this setup. So what we're seeing there is potentially, that's Barrow's wind speeds. Let's have a look at Barrow's wind gusts. Yeah, that's better. So you can see here, Barrow just starting to pick up some strong wind gusts, probably cyclone strength wind gusts at around about to, what's that, 3 a.m. in the morning? About 3 a.m. in the morning. As we go into 4, 5, 6, and 7, we can see that we're getting our winds right up to 70 to 80 knots. And these winds are stronger than the ones we experienced on the mainland because Barrow finds itself in that strongest quadrant of the cyclone. All right, those winds will then start to settle down for Barrow probably from about mid-afternoon tomorrow. All right. As we go down to Onslow, you don't start your big winds until tomorrow morning and probably not until mid to late morning. So nothing to stress out about there on daybreak, but the winds will become quite hectic from about around about early to mid, or probably mid to late, tomorrow morning. Then we're going to see our maximum winds, especially once they become onshore. We're going to feel really windy there in Onslow. We're going to be really windy. Forget feel really windy. We're going to get really windy there for Onslow as we get those winds coming onto the coastline from the ocean. So once the cyclone moves to your west or hits you directly and you get the onshore flow, that's when you're going to be at the at your windiest. All right, and that's also where you might have a bit of a surge threat there. Although the surge threat overall for WA is a little bit lower than what we'd normally anticipate because of the angle of approach of the cyclone. So for Exmouth, at this stage, with the cyclone expected to cross just west of Onslow, you're probably going to find yourself always on the western side of the circulation, which means that you're going to see southerlies and southwesterlies dominate this area. There's going to be some potential funneling of that air mass in between the land mass here, this part and the Cape. And so the idea here is going to be perhaps an increase in winds, but they will most likely be offshore. So really strong winds in the Gulf area. There are still some models, though, that do pull this all the way out to Exmouth. So we do need to keep an eye on you tomorrow. Not today. Tomorrow we'll need to keep an eye on you. If the cyclone does head to your way, we're probably looking at tomorrow evening for a coastal impact for you. All right. But at this stage, we're anticipating maybe a crossing just west of Onslow, given the current data. With a final crossing just west of Onslow, because the eye is going to sort of scrape land up here around Dampier as well. But the final proper crossing, the centre of the centre, expected to cross probably just a touch east of where that is, I think, just to the west of Onslow. All right, so that's for Onslow. And then if we continue driving this southwards, we're expecting to continue to drive this southwards. That means Coral Bay could start to see Category 1 winds on Monday morning or overnight Sunday night into early Monday morning. And then for areas further south around Carnarvon, we may even see marginal Category 1 winds for them come Monday lunchtime into Monday afternoon. You can see the system still packing quite a bit of a punch there as it tracks south-southeastwards parallel to the coast. So basically the whole track of this has been almost parallel to the coast the whole way. So it got off the coast and now it's almost tracking parallel to the coast, and then it's going to be tracking parallel just inland of the coast as we go through this part of the forecast here. But listen, there is still a little bit of doubt. I'll take you back to the Google Lab, and you can see here that in the Google Lab, there are still a few models that take it off the northwest coast and then bring it in again towards Denham and Carnarvon. So that's certainly something that we'll be keeping an eye on in case it drifts a little further west. I don't expect it to, but you just never know with these things, especially if it moves a little faster. If it moves a little faster, remember how we had that disagreement about where the system was going to be at 8 p.m. tomorrow night, and it was very, very wide area of disagreement due to forward speed. So if some of those western solutions verify, Exmouth gets caned tomorrow night, all right, versus the eastern solutions where the caning stays around Onslow and these offshore areas, right? And so obviously, if Exmouth gets caned, that puts the threat zone down towards Coral Bay and Carnarvon a little bit closer to home. So that threat increases for those folks as we go through Monday if the cyclone gets as far west as the Northwest Cape and then comes south from there. All right, so there is still a little bit of disagreement. Overall, this is pretty good agreement in model guidance, but there's enough there to just keep us interested east and west of the forecast track as we go into Monday. All right, so that's what, just one last thing we need to talk about is the rainfall aspect. The rain does get better as we go further west and the cyclone begins tracking south. So this is an example of the sort of rainfall we can expect and anticipate from this thing as it drifts further south. So if we go to, we'll go to Carnarvon and have a look at the 512, so we get a better view of what's going on region-wide. And I just want to have a look here at that's not right. No, that's better. All right, so I just want to have a look here at the potential for rainfall. So you'll notice there that overall we're seeing about 100 to 150 mils. Oh, sorry, that's not it. Yeah, there, that's better. We're seeing about 100 to 150 mils of rain through most of the Pilbara coastline there, right? That's the general model average rainfall potential, right? Then as we continue moving south, we're actually maintaining that rainfall potential even as we get out of the subtropics, even as we get out of the tropics into the subtropics. So there's still some really healthy rainfall expectations further southwards of this. And instead of being mostly offshore and out on Barrow, we're actually seeing quite a bit of this rain on the coastline and even inland of the coastline as the cyclone tracks southwards through that area just inland of the Northwest Cape. You can see the European model, which is slightly higher resolution, also showing that same process. So you can see there for Karratha, the heavy rain just offshore, Barrow gets caned, and then you can see as the cyclone comes south through the inland, where the rain actually is located in relation to the cyclone changes. So instead of being on the northwest side, it's on the southwest side and the southern side of the circulation as it drifts southward. So there's some really good rain potential heading down into the Gascoyne and even potentially in the northern parts of the central west from the remnants of this cyclone. All right, folks, that's all I've got for you now. I'll just go back through some comments. Firstly, I'm going to go to YouTube and see if anyone's given us any super chats. If they've given us a super chat, I've got to make sure I answer them. Before I do that, just a reminder, everything I've just talked to you about today, both the Queensland stuff and the WA stuff, I've already talked to the subscribers about. They'll have no surprises tonight whatsoever. You can check our subscription service out at weatheriq.com.au/subscribe up there on the top right. It's $32.95 a year. It's not going to break your bank. So that's our subscription service, and we give you forecasts even for WA on Tuesdays and Fridays of the wet season, and of course we give you multiple forecasts per day in situations like this, so you're never out of the loop. All right, let's have a look at some of our comments from YouTube first. Where are we? Evening, Nitso. My goodness, how many inches are them arms? Okay, so there was no super chats there and no comments about the cyclone. All right, I'm not sure. I'll have to measure the arms for you, mate. So, all right, let's have a look at some of our comments from Facebook. So I'll be guided by whatever you're asking me. So if you don't ask me anything, I'll call it quits here. Picking up as we speak in Karratha, says Nathan. Yeah, mate, and expected to pick up a lot more too. Let's have a quick look to see if while I've been gibbering has there. Oh, Jesus, look at that wind gust there, 146 kilometres an hour at our island, at our favourite island, which I still can't say. South-southeasterlies at 111 kilometres an hour. 119 or 18 kilometres an hour is the cutoff for Category 3. So we are very close to Category 3. Very, very close to Category 3. Yeah. So another 7 Ks is justification for Category 3. So just so very, very close there. The latest data from the island, 111 Ks. Jesus, that's very, very big sustained wind speeds. Remember, it doesn't go on gusts; it goes on sustained wind speed. So if they find 118 there, it becomes Category 3. All right. All quiet in Darwin. Yeah, mate, Darwin's one of those areas where we're not overly interested. There's lots of moisture up there. There's lots of potential for showers and thunderstorms, but they're going to be very hit and miss. They're going to be very, they're not going to be anything too spectacular, mate. But there's always a chance there, and there's a lot of moisture in the atmosphere up there in Darwin. So, yeah, there's always a chance. Starting to get windy in K-Town. Yeah, what do we got at K-Town? Last call, 69. Yeah, so we're now well and truly into Category 1 intensity at Karratha. All right, so 63, above 63 is what we need for Category 1, and we're at 69. We've only gusted to 82, but that doesn't matter. Gusts aren't the point here. It's sustained wind speeds, and so sustained wind speeds at Karratha are now Category 1. Or any good rainfall on the Gold Coast? Yeah, Brian, there could be. Look, mate, I probably won't talk about that tonight, but in our next, not our next one, or maybe our next one. Our next one's tomorrow night, so we're going to be discussing more of this one. But beyond tomorrow night, I think Tuesday night, where we're just looking at new stuff. That's when we can talk about. Gold Coast rainfall, man. Okay. All about Queensland, FWA, and the money we pay for you guys to chase. Oh, that's that Sean. That's that Sean fella. Bud, no, don't even get me started. Who's this dickhead? Paul Diplock. Who are you? You are a joke. Yeah, righto, Diplock. Yeah, you're gone when I finish out of here. Fucking moron. All right. My goodness, how many inches are them arms again? Thanks for the information, BN Time. Gail, good luck to all the folks feeling Tropical Cyclone Mitchell tonight, and thanks for all the info on the East Coast. No worries, Gail. Glad you appreciated it. Thanks for tuning in. Chantal, thanks, mate. Great work. Thanks, Chantal. Legenda is how you would pronounce it. No, I don't think it is, Renee. I don't think it is. I think there's a weird Frenchy name. Frenchies name stuff weird. And I know that's what us Aussies want to say, Legenda, but it's not. It's weird. I'm sure. I've got to Google it, but I know it's not Legenda. I know it's not that. I know Aussies have bastardised it to that. You know how we bastardise a lot of the English words. So we might have bastardised it to that, but that's definitely not the way it was intended to be said. Hopefully lots of rainfall on the Perth catchment. Brian, mate, I'm not seeing it. I'm not seeing a lot of rain for Perth. Well, just have a look. I'm not too familiar with your catchment, though. So let's have a look at your catchment. So that's your catchment for Perth. No, where's Perth? There. Let's go out a little bit. You've got to see that. Righto, so there's our Perth catchment. But I'm not seeing too much rain for you out of this, eh? Not in the catchment area. Yeah. No, maybe the upper catchment might get a few showers, but I'm not seeing any heavy rain for you, bud. It definitely looks a little bit more northeast of there, right? So because the cyclone's not going to just go south, it's going to go south and then south-southeast. So it's going to cut inland. So it's going to head out towards the goldfields. It's going to die by the time it does that, but as it's dying, it's going to head out that way. So the agricultural lands and then further east towards the goldfields would probably be the expectation, mate. I'd be surprised if your catchment got a lot of significant rainfall out of this. It hurts to say because obviously I know how much you folks desperately want some rain. But yeah, you can see maybe the northeastern edge of the catchment might get some worthwhile showers, but not heavy rain, mate. Yeah, Shane, I'm not convinced it's Legenda, mate. Is there going to be any rain or just wind? Because fuck all rain. Yeah, Jaden, so as we just talked about, mate, a lot of the rain is going to be north. I'm assuming you're talking about Karratha. Yeah, so bugger all rain. We're going to see the possibility of heavy rain tomorrow morning after the winds have died down a touch, and then potentially tonight in the next few hours there's still potential for rain. But after that, mate, you're going to be a bit disappointed. I've got to be honest. You're going to be a bit disappointed with how much rain or how little rain Karratha's going to get out of this, in my opinion. Nitso, Google pronunciation is Lutzondra. Lutzondra. Yeah, that makes sense. That's more of a French. Yeah, that's what I'd expect it to be. Yeah, something like that. Some weird Frenchy thing, like Lutzondra. Yeah, that makes a lot more sense than Legenda. Legenda sounds like an Aussie picked up the name and just bastardised it and made it sound Aussie. But yeah, Lutzondra definitely sounds French. Yeah, so where'd you get that from? Google. Yeah, thanks, Mark. Yeah, that sounds about right. Lutzondra. Yeah, Karratha getting the Townsville dry cyclone spell. Yeah, we had a pretty dry cyclone over Townsville way a couple of years ago, mates. And while I'm gibbering, I'm just going to put the radar on so we don't get any surprises while I'm gibbering. I'm just going to get us back to Dampier. Right, so yeah, so the idea was in Townsville we had a cyclone, got to Cat 3, gave us bugger all rain, gave us about what Karratha's getting, right? And so there was one little quadrant of the cyclone that was strong and it was out to sea, and the rest of it was just dribble like this stuff, Like this stuff coming into the coast now, which is all just dribble, right? All the really heavy stuff. Look at how close the heavy stuff is to Karratha right now. You know, it's very, very close, but it's staying just offshore, and it's not showing signs of wanting to come in. Yeah, that's disappointing, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah, so I feel your pain, Harvey. We had one of these last year, except the difference is we've had about 3 metres of rain since that one. Is there any water in Python Pool? Sorry, Jaden, I don't even know where that is, mate. You're going to have to talk to a local about that. Hopefully a local's on the chat. They might have a chat. No, they might be able to explain it to you. Come on, Mitchell. I'm waiting. Miserable 10 millimetres if we are lucky. Not sure where you are, Stace, but you should get more than 10 mils, surely. Ryan, rain's been extremely disappointing. Yeah, Ryan, you're going to be extremely disappointed, bud. As I say, this is going to be a recurring theme from Karratha folk, is the disappointment from the lack of rain from this. But just be aware that there is still potential in the next few hours. If this fills in here, see this filling in here? So if that fills in there and comes onto the coast, yep, there's potential there. And don't forget the little scorpion tail tomorrow. That could be the heaviest rain that you end up getting. I just realised that you guys are only seeing half a picture here, so let me bring that up for you. Yeah, so that's where all our heaviest rain is, right in there. And the idea is that there's a small chance that fills in here at the south edge, and that might nudge you. And then after that, you're going to get the really strong winds from the northeast, but not much rain. And then tomorrow morning, as the winds start to die down, there's a chance there that we just get this little tiny sort of tail edge of the system that dumps a truck ton of rain in a very isolated or very small little area between Karratha and Wickham. That's probably the best chance you're going to see of heavy rain. But for now, tonight, I would expect most of the really heavy stuff, if not all the really heavy stuff, to stay out to sea and then head out towards Barrow. Barrow is going to cop a freaking hammering out of this as we go into tomorrow. Renee, so another dry clone like Veronica. Cyclone Sean bought way more. Yeah, unfortunately, mate. Yeah, it's looking that way. Now, as I say, there's still some opportunities there. So, you know, we're not going to discount them altogether, but you're not going to see the rain that you would expect to see from a cyclone here. And this is something I've been telling the subscribers for many, many days now, so they didn't get their hopes up. So I'm hoping that none of our subscribers are going, oh, you said there was going to be rain, there's no rain. So, yeah, this is one of the things we talk about in our subscription service, by the way, so make sure you join us if you like it. I hope Perth gets some rain. We need it. Sheena, not from this, mate. You might, as I say, you might get a little bit of rain on the northeastern edge of your catchment. You're not going to get much rain out of this thing. Not complaining about the rain in South Headland, 75 in the gauge. Yeah, that's good. Disappointed it won't get more inland. Yeah, that's true. Yeah. 75 in Headland's good. You know, that was probably around what we were expecting. 50 to 100 is what we were expecting for Headland. Yeah, so that's pretty good. And there's probably a little bit more chance of getting those that northerly flow coming in and driving a few showers in the next 12 hours or so. Kelly, I'm in Karratha and all set for tonight. Good stuff, Kel. Thanks for joining us tonight. It's going to get a bit hectic in the next few hours, mate. Those winds will anyway. You're currently getting Category 1 winds through Karratha. We'll just go back to here and have a look if there's been any changes. No changes. So Roebourne is just under Category 1 winds at the moment, and Karratha is just under Category 1 winds at the moment. But very marginal Category 1 wins at the moment through Karratha at the moment. So, yeah, there's that should increase over time. But once again, the big issue that we've got is the potential for the elongation of the eye here as it pushes onto, or just north of the coastline, but that southern edge of the eye may elongate, so it may extend southwards a bit more. Even though the cyclone won't really move southwards, the cyclone's just doing its thing here, but the edge of the eye might end up drifting southwards, okay? I'm in Karratha, yep, good stuff. Hi, Weather IQ, today's my birthday, I'm 37. Good day, John, happy birthday, mate. What a great way to spend your birthday. Are you in Karratha, are you? I'll tell you what, don't get much better birthday present than a cyclone. Well, from our perspective anyway. Not if you're general public people, but yeah, from our perspective, that's an awesome birthday. Alan, better watching your screen in the box as can see everything you are talking about. Rainfall was from Carnarvon. Missed all the other. Okay. No worries, Al. Woody, mate. Nice to see you streaming on YouTube. Thanks, Johnny. Thanks for joining us. Fee, thank you, Nitso. As always, great comprehensive update. Looking forward to what may happen next week. Yeah, Fee, you're a Queenslander. Yeah, we're looking at, look, it's pretty complicated. I'm not going to say it's easy to forecast. It's very difficult to forecast what happens in Queensland in week 2. But, yeah, there's a bit of interest there, eh? Yeah. Looks like she's going to be blowing like a $2 hooker behind a road. I like it, Jacob. I like it. That's poor humour, but it's funny. Hey, mate, is the radar not picking up the rainstorms on the southeastern side? No, there's just not that much rain and storms on the southeastern side, John. No, there shouldn't be attenuation. So our radar is located, the Karratha radar is located basically there, between Karratha and Dampier. And, yeah, mate, it's just not picking it up because it's just nothing there. Yeah, there's just, I don't think that's attenuation of the signal. I just think there's not much there. And that's what the model is telling us, that the modelling is telling us that there's literally not much there. Yeah, so as I say, a bit disappointing. David, hey, Nitso, is there any chance of rain from this for Victoria, Geelong? No, mate. I think the whole thing dies fairly much in WA. So if we go to Victoria... Yeah, I'm not seeing much there. You're going to get rain from other things, so there's a bit of troughing there. There's a little bit that don't get excited. That's our previous chart. So yeah, there's a little bit of troughing there, resulting in some showers and thunderstorms. But mate, I'm not seeing anything major for Victoria. Yeah, not from this thing. I can't imagine this is going to give you much. Even the AI. Let's see if the AI's got something out of this for you. If it did, it would probably be around midweek. Oh yeah, look at this. A little bit of light rain coming to the southern edge of Victoria, 5 to 10, 10 to 15 mils. So the AI model's a little bit keener on giving you a bit of rain, but nothing major there, mate. Nitso wind is picking up here in Karratha. Thanks, Trev. Thanks for joining us on YouTube. Yeah. So let's have a look. Latest obs at Karratha. Let's just refresh. Yeah, there it is. Good call, mate. 69 k's an hour. That's the strongest your winds have gotten. 91 k's an hour is your gust now. It's 624. So what's that? Just a few minutes ago, 12, 13 minutes ago. 69 to 91 was at 6:30 p.m. So, yep, definitely increasing. Remember, around about that 8 p.m. time frame was when we're probably going to start to see some of our strongest. Between 8 and 10 is probably when we're really picking those winds right up, and then into the first couple of hours of tomorrow, overnight tonight, so up until that sort of 1, 2 a.m. time frame. So that's where we'll continue to see the really strong winds there. So, yeah, good call there, Trav. That's exactly what we're seeing. Stephen, about the island, I pronounce it like Legendaire. Oh, I like that, Legendaire. Yeah, I like that. Good luck to everyone in the cyclone area. Stay safe, says Val. Thank you, Val. Are we still getting a Cat 3? Trevor, in Karratha? Probably not. I think we went through this and we said that the maximum winds in Karratha we're anticipating from this system is around Cat 2. Wind accumulation. Just let me get the chart up here. So, the maximum sort of winds that we can experience in Karratha, as we said, there's got to be a bit of leeway here, a bit of an error margin, right? We're probably looking at something from about 60 knots at the bottom end through to about 75 knots at the top end of the sort of expectation of winds around here. And that takes into account a multitude of different models. So you can see this is the most aggressive model for Karratha and shows up to about 75 to 80 knots. probably a little aggressive. And for Dampier, it shows a really aggressive 87, 88 knots. So really, really aggressive there for Dampier. But generally speaking, mate, we're probably more around the 70 to 80 for Dampier. And for Karratha, 60 to 70 would be my expectation for maximum winds tonight from the system. Now remember, the wind field expands because the eye expands, but it doesn't mean that the wind field gets stronger. It doesn't mean that the winds get stronger in that expansion. It just means that they affect a larger area. All right, so yeah, probably looking at maxing at Cat 2 for Karratha, but it's going to get pretty hairy in the next few hours. All right, so we've just started to see that increase right now. That will increase further over the course of the next few hours. Karratha seems to be getting decent drizzle. Yeah. Once again, yeah, drizzle, but it's a cyclone. This is about as heavy as it's ever going to get. And, you know, drizzle, are we happy with drizzle? I mean, if beggars can't be choosers, but overall, if you're getting a cyclone, you want to see some bloody heavy rain to sort of make up for all the wind potential that the system brings you. Yeah, that's it. I've got to be perfectly honest, mate. I'm a bit disappointed if Karratha ends up with mostly just drizzle. But you can see there, it is trying to fill that southern edge of the eye, is trying to fill in here. So see that? See, it's trying to fill in. Maybe if that can fill in the next hour or two, we might see something a bit heavier around Karratha. But yeah, clearly the system continues to track just to the north of Karratha. It should pass between Karratha and Barrow through in the next few hours. What's your take on Marty? Fairly similar to Karratha, to be honest. For Marty, system's going to stay just offshore off Marty. Very similar. So this is in answer to Jamie. Fairly similar forecast for Marty, mate, to what's been forecast for Karratha. Marty's a little bit further inland, so maybe less susceptible to that strong northerly once the cyclone pushes past them. But yeah, overall, it's pretty similar. Just add an hour or two to what I just said for Karratha. So when we go back to here, do they have Marty on this one? No, they don't. That'd be about it there, wouldn't it? Around that creek. Is Marty next to a creek? I think it is. Yeah. So the idea would be maximum winds for Marty, for this area, just inland of the coast, probably just around that 55 to 65 knot range, as opposed to Karratha being in the 60 to 70s, Dampier in the 70 to 80s, right? So, yeah, probably more so Category 1 impacts for Marty, as opposed to Category 2, which could be Karratha, and potentially high-end Category 2 for Dampier. So for Marty, just being inland helps them a bit to avoid the worst of it. Yeah. Scott, yep, big wins at Lutzondra Island. Yeah, big wins there. 109, gusting to 152. We still haven't seen Category 3 winds, but I wouldn't be shocked if they upgraded. It's very, very close. What have they? Have they upgraded it or not? No, they've still got it at 2, yeah, which, I mean, it makes sense. The data suggests 2, but it's a very, very high marginal 2, as in a very high end to marginal, almost a 3. And you can see there the system, you can see that elongation to the south. See that little, it's almost like the eye is sort of clutching for land as it starts to interact, and that frictional effect brings the eye closer to land, or brings the edge of the eye closer to land, and then expands the wind field. That's a very, very interesting little part of this little part of the cyclone's track. And you can see the Bureau just adjusting the track a little bit further to the west here on landfall, around Onslow, or just west of Onslow. And once again, you can see that the edge of the error margin extends to that edge of the Dampier Peninsula up here. All right, so that's, yeah, very, very, as I say, I really, really like looking at the internal dynamics of a cyclone, because you can see how that that, I don't know if you can see what I'm pointing at, but you can see how the southern part of the eye is just reaching for land. Even though the cyclone hasn't really budged off its course, the southern part of the eye is just getting a little bit longer instead of being a tight circle. And that's what expands the wind field. Doesn't necessarily mean it gets stronger, just expands the wind field. Fascinating stuff. All right. What causes a decent cyclone to be dry? Usually, if the cyclone isn't attached to a real strong moisture advecting source, the cyclone has to produce its own convection and its own moisture from the water only. It tends to be a bit drier. So if this cyclone was attached to, say, a monsoon, and the monsoon was bringing in a situation where if the monsoon was bringing in a large area of moisture, we would see a tremendously large area of rainfall. And we would see this part on the eastern side, we would see a lot more rain on that eastern side than what we're seeing here. So we can almost see a half clone here. That's not meaning that the winds aren't really strong on the eastern side. They are. They're very strong. And in fact, they might even be the strongest winds for the onshore areas around Wickham and Karratha. But the rainfall aspect on the east side is very disappointing. So ideally, we would have liked to see that sort of convection on the western side wrapping right around it. And that would have given us a lot more rainfall through the region. But, as I say, it's one of those situations. The system's out on its own, and there's a lot of dry air around it, not coming into it, but around it. And there's a lot of wind shear on the northeastern side of the circulation. So a lot of northeasterly shear, which is driving a lot of the convection and the outflow out here to the south. So a lot of this lighter, drizzly rain, even some of the stronger thunderstorm activity being displaced further westwards as well. So yeah, there's not much there for you to sink your teeth into if you're on that eastern and northeastern side, unfortunately. Renee, don't worry, Python Pool is the running joke of the town. Okay. All right, so that must be an in-joke. Fair enough. Nitso, what is your opinion on the US weather channels? Oh, that is Ryan. You're all... Mate, I'm not sure, Matt. I can't say I watch a lot of the US weather channels. Unless there's a tornado. But I don't know anything about. I don't know anything about this Ryan, Yol, and max velocity. I'm not sure what you're talking about there, mate. Sorry. Interesting. WA gets another one. Can't wait till the stuff in Queensland is worth talking about with confidence. Yeah, John, you might be waiting a few days, man. That stuff in Queensland is looking pretty ordinary at the moment, looking like 1,000 different possibilities there. Does this drag out to Monday for Onslow? Probably not. It's over pretty quick for Onslow. Remember, the cyclone's not gonna muck around. It wants to move, and it's moving with purpose. It's not gonna stall and stop and stuff around. So once it gets past Onslow, it will continue moving fairly quickly past Onslow. So you can see there, it gets to Onslow around about tomorrow late afternoon, evening, and then overnight at 1 a.m. in the morning, it's what is it, about 100 something k's away from Onslow by that stage. So there's Onslow. Cyclone's about 100 k's away from Onslow just a few hours later. And by the morning on Monday, if you're in Onslow, the cyclone's way down here in the northern Gascoyne by that stage. So it's about 200, 250 k by the morning away from Onslow. Onslow will have seen moderating winds by that stage and not a hell of a lot of rain either on the back side of the system. As you can see here, that rain on the eastern side of the system is very disappointing at the moment. Might change still, but disappointing at the moment. So that's for Kane. And who said Jamie? Yeah, it's picking up a bit here. Nothing too flash yet. No, it's around Category 1. It's pretty mild in Wickham at the moment. Wickham is a touch inland, are they not? They're not right on the coast, Wickham. So, yeah, they're just inland. I'd be interested to hear from someone in Point Sampson. Wickham, sure, I can understand. It is a little bit a touch inland, not right on the coastline. There's, that extra couple of Ks that you got to travel to the coast. It makes the difference. Point Sampson is right on the coast, so I'd love to hear from someone in Point Sampson. They should be about to get caned by this little here, this little developing core winds just in here. Yeah, so they're about to get hit by that, and so it'd be very interesting to hear from someone in Point Sampson in the next 10 to 20 minutes. Very interesting indeed. Jamie, we were getting told by our hotel it's possibly going to hit Cat 4. I'm not sure where you are, Jamie, but if you're in Karratha, no. The highest we could probably anticipate is a marginal lowest end of a Cat 3 for Karratha, but even that looks pretty difficult at the moment, probably looking more towards Cat 2 and low to moderate Cat 2 at the moment, based on what we're seeing evidence of. I can live without a Cat 3 or higher. Yeah, I think most folks are okay with 1s and 2s. Once they start getting 3s, it starts to get a bit hairy. And then obviously 4s and 5s create a lot of devastation. So most folks can live with a 3. And as I say, what makes me interested about this one is the expansion of that wind field. I love seeing that. So you can see there, the cyclone wants to tighten up, right? But the frictional effect of the surface is just stopping it from doing that. Yeah, very, very intriguing. The nerd in me loves this stuff here, this internal dynamics of the eye. I love that shit. For you guys, it might just be boring. What's he dribbling on about? But it's very fascinating how the eye interacts with land as it gets close to land, but doesn't directly hit land. Yeah, very interesting. Zabinator, hey, Nitso, Pentland hasn't had anything. I don't think you were expecting anything. Pentland, you're on the other side of the country, Zavinator. Yeah, no, you're not getting anything out of this one. Yeah, Pentland maybe at the end of the week. Yeah, end of the week for Pentland. Should be seeing some showers and storms out there, mate. So get set for those, and then through the weekend should be seeing a lot of showers and storms through that Pentland Charters Towers area. Bring on the rain here in Gero. The wind has been nothing new. It'd just be a different direction. Good on you, Shazzy. Yeah, look, at this stage, maybe just east of Gero for the big rain. Probably well east of Gero, actually, at the moment. So, yeah. Aaron, my old man, lives in Samson. Yeah, okay. It'd be interesting to see how he's going, mate, because they're about to just in the next, probably in the next 20 minutes, they're about to cop a battering from the from this little cell just here. This little, yeah, just in there. That's about to hit them, and I'd be expecting to see some very strong winds inside that. Yeah, you can see a lot of velocity folding going on, so that's where the velocity. You can see a lot of the models just quit here. You can see where we get the grey. Not the model, the radars just quit and just said, "Nah, this is too windy for me. I'm out." So I think the radar maxes out at about 90 k's an hour. So obviously this is much bigger than 90 k's an hour, and the radar's just clonked out. And you can see here around, yeah, just see how we're clonking out around Wickham as well. So yeah, there's just that potential right there in this next band to see some of the strongest winds for Point Sampson. So keep an eye. Talk to your old man and let him know. Yeah. So all right, I think that's it. I'll just check YouTube again, see if we've got any super chats. The last thing I want is people paying money and me not getting to their question. Yep. No, we don't have any super chats. Beautiful. All right, folks. So weatheriq.com.au/subscribe. We'll have another subscriber update in the morning. I'll be talking to you live again tomorrow night for folks in Onslow, Exmouth, and down towards Carnarvon. We'll be chatting about that area, and we'll have another look at if there's any clarity in the Coral Sea and the Gulf of Carpentaria into week 2 of the forecast. Thanks for watching tonight. Stay safe if you're in the Karratha Dampier area. Keep an eye on those really strong winds that are going to set up in the next hour or two, and then continue for the next 3 to 4 hours after that, at least. And then, as I say, tomorrow morning, just watch out for that little scorpion tail that will come onto the coast somewhere between Wickham and Karratha. Thanks for watching tonight. We'll talk to you tomorrow night if you're interested in the further west areas.